Well, happy Thursday, everybody. We are in the book of Hebrews, chapter 12 this morning for our devotion. As always, I hope you've already read the chapter and written in your journal. And as you're opening your Bible, if you haven't done so already, just want to remind you this Sunday, join us for worship. We have our full schedule services and life groups, contemporary services at 8:30 and 11 o'clock, and our traditional service in the middle at 9:45. So you come and invite someone to come with you. Pray for the person you're going to invite, and pray that God does a great work among us as we worship Him this Lord's Day. All right, Hebrews chapter 12, and there's a lot in this chapter we could talk about, but one of the verses that grabbed my attention when I was reading it is verse 25, especially the first part of the verse where he says, "See to it that you do not refuse him who is speaking." See to it that you do not refuse him who is speaking. Now, the context is starting at verse 18 down through verse 24. He goes back to the Old Testament and reflects on the experiences recorded in the book of Exodus and Deuteronomy, where God's glory appeared to the people of Israel, Mount Sinai, the tent of meeting, and how the people trembled, how they backed up in fear, wanted Moses to be the mediator between them and God. They were afraid they would die if they got too close to God. And those powerful, beautiful, holy moments of encountering God. And so he's recounting that when God's glory was on the mountain there at Sinai in the Old Testament. But then he transitions in the middle of that in verse 22. Verse 22, he says, "But you," not referring to those Old Testament saints during the days of Moses, "but you have come to Mount Zion and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to myriads of angels, to the general assembly and church of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood, which speaks better than the blood of Abel." In one sense, he is saying, you have come to something greater than what your Jewish forefathers experienced in the book of Exodus and Deuteronomy when they were with Moses at Mount Sinai. And usually when we read those stories and the glory of God and how they tremble, wow, what that must have been like to be there. But he's saying, because you've come to Jesus and you're part of his church, part of his family, you've come to something better, more glorious, better. So, verse 25, "See to it then, because of this, see to it that you do not refuse him who is speaking. Make certain that you both listen to him and do what he says. Obey him. Because you remember, after having those experiences with the glory of God at Mount Sinai, what did the people do? They disobeyed God. Spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness. He says, you've had a better experience. See to it. Therefore, make sure that you don't do what they did, that you do not refuse him who is speaking, that you don't choose to not listen or not obey the way they did, because he goes on in verse 25 to say, "For if those did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, much less will we escape who turn away from him who warns from heaven." Wow. He says, the consequences in your life for not listening to and obeying what God tells you will be severe, just like it was for the people of Israel when they refused to obey God and listen to him after their experiences at Mount Sinai. They wandered 40 years in the wilderness until all the adults died. He said, hey, disobeying God always turns out poorly for us. How shall we escape? We can't. So see to it that we do not refuse God. When God in His Word, okay, the Bible, when God is speaking to you, when you're in a worship service and the sermon's being preached and God speaks to you, don't refuse Him. Listen to Him and then do what He says. Don't just listen, do what He says. Listen and obey, because failure has consequences. Hey, what's God saying to you? What do you need to do? Is there an area where you're disobeying God? Take some time and pray about it and make some changes. I'll see you tomorrow.